Welcome to today's deep dive. If you look at our visual backdrop today, you'll see a dimly lit, narrow alleyway.
Yeah, very atmospheric.
Right. It's designed to evoke post-liberation Korea, specifically a hillside neighborhood in Seoul called Cheongpa Dong.
Which is a crucial setting.
Exactly. We are stepping into a very intense, very specific moment in history to examine an excerpt from the autobiography of Reverend Sun Myung Moon.
A fascinating primary source.
We're focusing on a chapter titled The Sacred Tears of Cheongpa Dong, which details the gritty early days of the Unification Church.
It really is gritty.
It is. So our mission today is to explore the extreme dedication, the highly unconventional community-building tactics, and the profound physical sacrifices that laid the foundation for a movement that would eventually span the globe.
But before we delve into the mechanics of this text, we need to clearly establish the boundaries of this deep dive.
Right, the ground rules.
Yes. For you listening, it is absolutely crucial to understand that we are examining this text purely as a historical and autobiographical document.
Purely historical.
Exactly. We are not taking sides, nor are we endorsing the religious viewpoints, the theology, or the supernatural claims made by the author.
We're just looking at the text.
Our goal is strictly to impartially convey the ideas, the leadership philosophies, and the historical anecdotes exactly as they are presented in this original source material. We just want to better understand how this specific community was constructed from the ground up.
Okay, let's unpack this. The context here is rooted in raw survival and sheer willpower.
Total survival mode.
The chapter opens shortly after Moon has reemerged into the world following a 3-month imprisonment.
Right, and he was found not guilty.
Not guilty, yes. And upon his release, he expresses this overwhelming sense that he owed a tremendous debt to God.
Which drives everything that happens next.
But rather than seeking out a grand cathedral or a polished space to launch his efforts, he deliberately sought a place to start over from the absolute bottom.
Well, the historical reality of post-liberation Korea plays a huge role here, too.
Oh, absolutely.
The country was economically devastated. Resources were incredibly scarce. So when the small congregation needed a dedicated space, they managed to take out a loan of 2 million won.
Which was a lot to them, but it didn't buy much.
No, not at all. They used it to purchase a tiny, dilapidated house on a hillside in Cheongpa Dong.
And to give you a sense of just how humble this space was, it was categorized as enemy property.
Right, left behind by the Japanese.
Yeah, a vacant home following Korea's liberation. It offered a mere 710 square feet of floor space.
Tiny.
Just reaching the front door required navigating a long and narrow alleyway that felt like a dark tunnel.
Hence our visual backdrop for today.
Exactly. And when they finally got inside, the physical state of the building was shocking.
Shocking is an understatement.
All the pillars and walls were so thickly caked in dirt that made the early members wonder what on earth had transpired in that space before they acquired it.
Which brings us to the first major leadership principle we can extract from this text.
To the cleaning process.
Yes, establishing a baseline of physical investment. They didn't just hire someone to clean it.
They couldn't afford to anyway.
Right. Not only did they hold a ceremonial opening. Moon and the young people of the church spent 4 solid days scrubbing the interior with a sodium hydroxide solution.
Essentially a caustic lye.
Just to strip the grime from the walls. If we connect this to the bigger picture, you have to consider the psychological impact on a community when the leader is visibly engaging in that level of severe, hazardous physical labor.
It sets the tone immediately.
Exactly. It immediately bonds the group through shared hardship.
And that shared hardship became the absolute standard. The lifestyle maintained in that 710 square foot house was genuinely extreme.
Extreme is the right word.
The daily routine described in the text defies normal biological limits.
It really does.
Moon would spend his nights crouched on the floor of the main bedroom in prayer until 3 or 4 in the morning.
Crouched, not even sitting comfortably.
Right. He might take a brief nap for an hour or two, then get up at 5 to immediately begin the day's rigorous schedule.
And he did this for years.
7 years. He maintained this brutal cycle for 7 years, claiming that despite the sleep deprivation, his eyes shone like the morning star, and he never felt fatigue.
When you analyze the mechanics of high-demand organizations, whether we are talking about mid-century religious movements or even modern tech startup cultures, the concept of a leader modeling an impossible standard of endurance is a recurring theme.
Yeah, the hustle culture dialed up to 1,000.
Exactly. When the person directing the movement is only sleeping 1 hour a night and scrubbing floors with lye, it completely redefines what is considered a normal level of commitment for everyone else.
It really makes complaining about a 10-hour workday feel trivial.
It absolutely does.
And he didn't even want to pause for meals.
Right, the eating crouched down part.
The text details how his mind was so consumed with the mission that waiting for a table to be set felt like a massive waste of time. He would simply eat, crouched on the floor, rushing through his food.
Just fuel for the machine.
He operated on a relentless internal mantra. Pour out your dedication. Pour it out even if you are sleepy. Pour it out until you are exhausted.
That phrase is so intense.
He firmly believed he was planting seeds for a global harvest, pushing through constant opposition and false accusations.
That mantra, pour out your dedication, functions as the operating system for the entire early community.
Yeah, it's the core philosophy.
It is a philosophy of total expenditure of the self. There's no concept of pacing.
No work-life balance at all.
Zero. The expectation is complete spiritual and physical exhaustion in service of a singular goal.
A year into this grueling routine, the church had grown to 400 members.
Which is significant growth.
It is. And this is where the narrative introduces a highly controversial yet historically common element of early religious movements.
The supernatural claims.
Yes. Moon's autobiography details that during his intense, sleep-deprived prayer sessions, he possessed a form of clairvoyance.
Right.
He would call out members' names, and their faces would vividly pass through his mind. He claimed he could see if they were crying, laughing, or suffering from a hidden illness before he even spoke to them.
The text also notes that he would receive sudden inspirations that a specific, unexpected person would visit the church that day.
And they would show up?
According to the account, they would arrive without fail. When he approached members and asked them about the specific struggles or illnesses he had seen in his prayers, they were reportedly astounded that he knew without being told.
It's a classic, charismatic recruitment draw.
It really is.
He would just offer a simple smile when they asked how he knew. But the most striking demonstration of this comes during the preparations for a holy blessing ceremony.
Oh, this story's wild.
Which, for context, is the movement's highly formalized marriage and dedication rite. Moon was interviewing a groom candidate, and part of this process involved verifying the candidate's chastity.
Right, a strict requirement.
Moon asks the young man if he has remained pure, and the groom confidently swears that he has.
Moon asks him a second time.
The groom gives the same confident assurance.
Moon asks a third time, and the young man swears again that he has maintained his purity.
Rather than accepting this, Moon looks the groom in the eye and asks, "You served your military service in Hokkien, Kangwon province, didn't you?"
The detail there is incredible.
Instantly, the candidate's confidence shatters. He quietly admits he did.
And then the reveal.
Moon then completely dismantles the lie, detailing exactly what happened. He tells the young man that on his way to Seoul during a leave, he stopped at an inn and had illicit sex with a woman wearing a red skirt.
A red skirt.
Moon is furious at the deception, stating, "I know exactly what you did, why do you lie?" and actually chases the man out of the blessing ceremony venue.
Right out the door.
The text frames this with the assertion, if a person keeps his heart's eyes open, he can see even what is hidden.
It is a highly cinematic moment in the autobiography. But from a sociological standpoint, it raises a fascinating issue regarding how a movement utilizes supernatural claims to build authority.
It's very effective.
Very. Moon readily acknowledges in the text that many early followers were attracted to the church precisely because of these paranormal phenomena, rather than a deep understanding of the actual teachings.
It was a massive engine for recruitment.
Absolutely.
So what does this all mean? You have a leader who has cultivated this reputation for incredible clairvoyance, drawing hundreds of people to a tiny, dirty house.
Right.
It is the ultimate growth hack for a new religious movement. But then he does something completely counterintuitive.
He deliberately stops.
He just stops.
He intentionally ceases talking about the visions and the things he is seeing with his heart's eyes. He explicitly states, "A faith that relies on unexplained or miraculous occurrences is not a healthy faith."
That's such a pivot.
He argues that phenomena categorized as miracles often serve to confuse society rather than enlighten it. His core theological pivot here is that sin must be resolved through a grueling process of personal redemption.
It takes hard work.
Yes, and that vital work cannot be bypassed by relying on spiritual parlor tricks.
I find that pivot to be the most fascinating leadership decision in the entire text. He actively abandons a highly effective mystical recruitment tool.
It is a massive risk.
Huge.
He is trading a fast, awe-based recruitment strategy for a much harder, pragmatic doctrine of personal responsibility.
Which is much harder to sell.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But logically, he recognizes that awe is an incredibly fragile foundation for a long-term community.
Right, because the novelty wears off.
If people are only showing up for the magic, they will inevitably leave when the magic stops, or when the harsh reality of living in a 710-square-foot house with no money sets in.
You need something deeper.
He needed a congregation anchored to the difficult work of redemption, not the spectacle of miracles.
And the practical application of that redemption was rooted in an incredibly radical, almost punishing form of empathy.
Punishing is a good word for it.
The text notes that, despite the congregation growing, Moon treated every individual as if they were the only person in the room. He describes sitting with an elderly woman or a young man, listening to them with total dedication.
Just listening.
They might start by recounting their wedding day, eventually meandering into their family traumas or their husband's illnesses, and Moon would just sit and listen.
The duration of this listening is what stands out.
Yeah.
The text claims he wouldn't even notice the passing of time, sometimes listening to a single person for 10 to 20 hours straight.
I have to ask, from an organizational standpoint, how is it physically or psychologically sustainable to actively absorb someone's trauma for 20 hours while operating on 1 hour of sleep?
It defies conventional sustainability.
It sounds impossible.
But his reasoning, as outlined in the text, is that people in pain operate with a profound sense of urgency.
They need an outlet.
They were desperately seeking solutions to their suffering. He viewed this marathon listening not as passive counseling, but as a proactive way to love their life and repay the debt he felt he owed for his own survival.
That's intense.
And it wasn't just sitting quietly. He describes sharing his sincere heart with fervor, praying for them in tears to the point where his blood and sweat would literally saturate the floorboards beneath him.
Leaving the wood permanently damp.
Exactly.
Think about the level of trust that builds. If you are a follower and you know the leader is willing to physically bleed and weep into the floorboards for your specific individual pain, your loyalty becomes absolute.
Completely absolute.
And this intense level of sacrifice wasn't just a top-down mandate. The text outlines an entire ecosystem of sacrifice that permeated the early membership.
Exactly. The baseline of endurance set by the leader was adopted by the followers. Take the story of Hyo-won-yu.
Oh, that story is heartbreaking.
The text acknowledges that while everyone endured poverty, his suffering was particularly acute. He was battling a severe lung illness.
Which makes speaking difficult.
Yes, yet he took on the role of lecturing the church's teachings for 18 hours a day.
18 hours.
He sustained that unbelievable pace for 3 years and 8 months.
Their daily survival during this era was bleak. They couldn't afford rice, so they survived on barley.
Just barley.
They only ate 2 meals a day, and their only side dish was raw kimchi that had only been left to ferment for a single night.
Which makes the small human details in the text so impactful.
Yes, the detail about the salted shrimp.
Right.
Hyo-won-yu had a fondness for tiny salted shrimp, so he kept a small container of them in the corner of the room. Occasionally, to endure those grueling 18-hour days of lecturing through a lung illness, he would go over with his chopsticks and eat just a few of them.
Just a few to keep going.
Moon writes about the deep pain it caused him to see Hyo-won-yu lying exhausted and hungry on the floor. Moon desperately wished he could afford to buy him expensive salted conch, but it was financially impossible.
It's a very touching window into their shared poverty.
It really is.
It highlights how shared physical hardship anchors an ideology in undeniable reality. The theology wasn't just abstract ideas discussed in a comfortable classroom.
Far from comfortable.
It was forged through the tangible reality of hunger and illness. You see this absolute commitment trickling down to the youngest members as well.
The Songhwa Students Association,
Right.
which was comprised of the middle and high schoolers in the church, these kids were so moved by the sacrifices of the older members that they actively gave up the packed lunches their mothers made for them, donating the food to the pioneer missionaries.
They gave up their own food.
The students even organized a schedule to take turns going hungry. When the evangelists received these lunches, knowing the teenagers were starving themselves that day, they would literally eat the food in tears.
The emotional weight of that meal.
Moon observes that this pure expression of dedication from the youth redoubled the adults' determination to accomplish their goals, even at the cost of their own lives.
And when those missionaries were sent out across the country to expand the movement, They didn't rely on slick marketing.
No pamphlets or billboards.
In fact, they faced a cascade of vile rumors and intense societal pushback. It was so hostile that many felt they couldn't even openly identify themselves as members of the Unification Church.
But their tactic wasn't to stand on soapboxes and argue theology.
Not at all.
They took a completely different approach. They went into these hostile neighborhoods and simply started cleaning the streets.
Physical labor.
They would find homes that needed physical labor and just start helping. In the evenings, they organized and taught literacy classes.
Teaching people to read.
They spent months doing menial labor and teaching people to read, slowly building a foundation of undeniable practical trust before ever preaching a word.
It is a masterclass in grassroots community building.
It really is.
You cannot easily vilify a group of people who are silently cleaning your streets and teaching your children to read. The physical service predates and validates the spiritual message.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. We jump forward in the timeline.
Right, things are looking up.
The church has survived its brutal infancy, it has grown significantly, and Moon is now traveling in the United States.
A completely different environment.
While he is away, he receives word that the members back in Korea are planning a surprise for him. They are going to beautifully remodel that original dilapidated Cheongpa Dong church.
From a conventional standpoint, you would think this is a moment of triumph.
You would.
Upgrading from the dirt-caked enemy property to a proper modern facility is the ultimate symbol that the movement has succeeded.
But his reaction is the exact opposite. Moon is intensely distressed by the news.
He hates the idea.
He immediately sends an urgent telegram from the U.S. ordering them to halt the construction right away. He argues that it doesn't matter how wonderfully the building could be refurbished or modernized. In his eyes, a beautiful exterior is completely worthless if the history embedded in it is destroyed.
What's fascinating here is his philosophy regarding tradition and physical space.
It's unique.
He doesn't view tradition as an aesthetic choice or a written set of rules. He views it as a living record of pain and survival that is physically absorbed by the environment.
Absorbed by the wood itself.
He writes that what truly matters is the secret life of tears that dwells within the architecture itself.
He gets incredibly specific about this.
Yeah.
He mentions the history carved into the physical pillars of the house.
Right.
He explains that when he looks at a particular wooden pillar, he vividly remembers clinging to it, weeping over a specific crisis in the early days. Just seeing that unaltered pillar reconnects him to that exact emotional state.
It's a touchstone.
He explicitly values the slightly crooked door frames because their imperfection is a testament to the past.
He is devastated by the idea that the old floorboards might be ripped out and replaced.
The ones saturated with sweat.
The very floorboards that, as we discussed earlier, were literally saturated with his sweat and tears during those marathon prayer sessions.
Yeah.
He states, "What I need are the memories of that pain. People who cannot respect their own tradition are destined to fail." He declares he would much rather pray in that old, run-down, crooked house than in the most magnificent, newly built church in the world.
Think about the spaces you value in your own life. We are so conditioned to want the upgrade, the renovation.
Always looking for the shiny new thing.
But for Moon, it was a profound rejection of the sanitized, comfortable present. He demanded a physical connection to the gritty, painful past that actually birthed their community.
It keeps them grounded.
And this reliance on raw, unpolished sincerity over slick presentation heavily influenced his approach to public speaking as well.
You would assume that a religious leader with a global following would eventually adopt a highly polished, professional oratorical style.
Like a megachurch pastor.
Right. But Moon writes that despite a lifetime of preaching, he still physically trembles before standing in front of a crowd.
He viewed public speaking not as a performance, but as a literal matter of life and death, carrying the immense weight of believing his words could determine a listener's spiritual fate.
That's a heavy burden.
Because of that pressure, he actively refused to organize his sermons in advance.
He believed that pre-writing a sermon allowed a speaker's ego and private objectives to corrupt the message.
Getting in the way of the spirit.
He didn't want to stand at a pulpit and simply show off the theological knowledge stored in his head. The goal was to pour out an earnest, passionate heart in real time.
So instead of writing notes or practicing rhetoric, his preparation consisted of spending at least 10 hours in intense prayer before ever appearing in public.
10 hours.
He used the analogy of a mighty tree. He argued that even if the leaves are a little bug-eaten or imperfect, The tree remains fundamentally healthy as long as it has deep roots.
I like that analogy.
He fully admitted that his unscripted words might sometimes be awkward or lack polish, but he was convinced that if a completely sincere heart was present, the message would resonate.
The text paints a vivid, almost jarring picture of those early sermons. He wasn't wearing fine robes.
No.
He preached wearing an old U.S. military jacket and fatigues that had been dyed black. He spoke with such overwhelming fervor that he would drip with sweat and tears throughout the address.
Giving everything.
He recalls that not a day went by without him weeping out loud before the congregation, preaching with such physical intensity that he felt his spirit was on the verge of leaving his body.
So, as we synthesize this deep dive into the sacred tears of Cheongpa Dong, we've uncovered the blueprints of a community built on a foundation of radical, almost incomprehensible physical endurance.
Truly extreme.
From scrubbing walls with lye and sleeping 1 hour a night, to surviving on barley and raw kimchi.
And giving away your lunch.
Yes. We've examined the deliberate, strategic rejection of miracle-based recruitment in favor of the much harder, grittier path of personal redemption.
Choosing the hard road.
And we've seen a profound, desperate reverence for the emotional history embedded in physical spaces, using crooked doors and tear-stained floorboards over the comfort of a beautiful renovation.
It serves as a fascinating sociological study in the mechanics of early movement building. And I want to turn this directly over to you, listening right now, to consider how these historical concepts apply to the world we navigate today.
It's highly relevant.
Because ultimately, this text isn't just about a specific church in 1950s Korea. It is a profound exploration of how human beings assign value to their own history, their struggles, and the physical spaces they occupy.
Absolutely. The contrast between our modern impulses and this historical text is striking.
So I want to leave you with this final thought to mull over. In our modern world, whether we are talking about scaling tech startups, managing community organizations, or even cultivating our own homes, we are constantly rushing to remodel, to upgrade, and to sanitize our spaces.
We want everything to look perfect.
We are conditioned to want the newest, the cleanest, and the most efficient environment possible. But in our relentless quest for a beautiful, flawless exterior, what invisible history, what metaphorical sweat in the floorboards are we accidentally erasing? And how does the loss of that physical memory fundamentally change who we are?
That is the perfect question to end on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep asking questions, keep seeking out multiple perspectives, and we will catch you next time.